All right. So today, this week's topic that I wanted to cover was Wikipedia, and the reason I want to cover Wikipedia is I've had a lot of clients reach out to me and ask me if I can make them a Wikipedia page or edit their Wikipedia page. Questions about the advantages of Wikipedia, when it makes sense to have one. What are the advantages of it? Why do companies not get a Wikipedia page, etc. So I thought it would just be good for me to give a presentation on Wikipedia, how you can get a Wikipedia page, why you should get a Wikipedia page, how to go about the process, and some common tips and advice if you decide to get one. So the first thing is, how does Wikipedia help? Like, why is it important? And for me, there's a couple of things that most notably stick out when I see companies get a Wikipedia page. The first is that their brand authority increases greatly. I don't know about you, but if I'm about to meet with somebody who I think has a possibility of being famous or well known, the first thing I'll do is I'll see if they're on Wikipedia, right? And I think that there's a solid difference between the companies you see on Wikipedia and the ones that we don't. And whether it's true or not, when we see companies or people on Wikipedia, there's just a certain, there's a certain level of trust that we have in them. We feel like they're more well known, they're more reputable, and that's just because of how hard it is to get on Wikipedia and also how notable of a site Wikipedia is. Second, it helps in Google search. So all of you guys who are working with me know how obsessed I am with SEO and Google rankings. And the cool thing about Wikipedia is Google absolutely loves it. It's always on like the first page of Google search, which is great. So you combine those first 2 points. It helps build your brand authority, and it's on the first page of Google. Having prospective clients and customers see that your brand authority is on the first page of Google, you combine that and it's really powerful. And then finally, it brings attention to other sources. We'll go into that more, but on your Wikipedia page, the way I like to think about it is if you do your Wikipedia page right, it's just a gateway to so many other amazing articles, references, and sources about your company. That's a huge, huge builder of eyeballs that can be driven to the content that you've already produced. So how big is Wikipedia? Just to put this in terms of how powerful the tool is, it's the 7th biggest website in the world, and it has over 325 million readers. So for a lot of you, I'm doing a lot of PR and marketing in terms of getting us into top outlets. Well, put that in perspective, right? So Wikipedia, 325 million readers. I mean, that's huge. That's like an incredibly high domain authority. And so the amount of eyeballs that you can get if you're on Wikipedia is substantial. And what I've noticed is there's just been a huge spike once I can get a company on Wikipedia or edit their Wikipedia page so it really is built to attract customers. Once that's done, there's always a huge spike in business, and usually there's a continued spike. And I think a lot of companies, when they first get on Wikipedia, they need to make some edits, etc. But once they hit their Wikipedia page solid, they notice a huge, huge jump in sales just because of the volume of people who are checking out that Wikipedia page. Now, this is an example. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to show any of my clients' works of the Wikipedia pages I've made, but I decided to look one up and kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. So this is Cam Newton's Wikipedia page. He's not a client of mine. With that said, I'm a huge Cam Newton fan, even though he messed up really bad at the Super Bowl. We don't have to talk about that for you football fans. But anyway, so Cam Newton's Wikipedia page, for me, this sounds really nerdy, but like I cry tears of joy when I see this, because you look at his Wikipedia page and it has over 100 references. And what that means is that Cam Newton will never not be on Wikipedia. People who hate Cam Newton cannot take this page down because it has so many references to back up what's on the page. In addition, if you're a Cam Newton fan, you really don't need to go anywhere else. All of his content, or a lot of his content that's substantial and very, very valuable to readers, is already here. I can see, like if you even look at the dates, February 8th, 2016, July 15. I mean, everything is really up to date, right? All these articles are really up to date. So what that does is it allows readers to first come here who are looking up Cam Newton and then go to anywhere they want, which is a great, great way that we can convert people over to sales. So why isn't everyone on Wikipedia? It's such an amazing tool. Why isn't everyone on here? The number one reason that I see is there's not enough references. So when I work with a client and I get a request of like, hey, Jay, can you get us on Wikipedia? The first thing I'll look at is how many references the client currently has. So it really depends where you are in the process. I like to shoot for around like 15 references, which is a lot, before I feel very confident that I can get the company on Wikipedia. There's over 1,000 guidelines that also surround Wikipedia in terms of article submissions. So like, I can't tell you the number of times I've almost pulled out my hair creating Wikipedia pages just because it's just so much work. And a lot of times, at least when I first started, I would create a Wikipedia page for a client and be taken down literally in minutes. And so you have to find somebody who's really good at following those guidelines, which can be tough. I've never seen a straight newbie to Wikipedia do it perfectly on the first attempt. Like I've tried a lot of times before I could get this right. So it actually takes some skill. And then it depends if there's a lot of controversy around the topic. So to give you guys an example, I had a client who asked me if I could make a Wikipedia page for him. He was pretty well known, but he wanted me to include his net worth being over $10 million on the Wikipedia article. And like that's just a huge red flag because he wasn't even worth $1 million. So creating that was really, really tough. It didn't get done. It got taken down so fast because there's no credible sources to back that up. And that's an example, right? Like you don't want to over-exaggerate on your Wikipedia page. To start, stay as neutral as possible. That's a philosophy that I follow. The more neutral you can be, at least to start as you're building your references up, the better, because editors are really going to look for any kind of controversy that they can find in a Wikipedia page, especially in the original submission. So if there's anything that's not heavily backed up with credible sources, it's going to get taken down. So how can you get on Wikipedia? I think it's a great goal for every single company, if you're not on Wikipedia, to want to get to that point. The first step that I would suggest is first deciding what you want to highlight, your founder, CEO, or the actual company to start. And I do that with some of the companies that I'm more involved in right now. So, an example would be an alumni engagement app company that I'm a part of called Alumnify. Right now, we're not even on Wikipedia, and I'm working on our page currently. And we're actually not starting with Alumnify, we're starting with myself, just because I have more out there, I have more references, etc. Now, I think it depends on the company. I run into a lot of companies, I would say really around 50-50 of ones that want to highlight the CEO or founder first and then the company. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. In fact, if your CEO is more well known than the company to start, if it's more of a startup, the advantage is you can get your CEO into Wikipedia, and then in 3 to 6 months down the line, after a little bit of time, it's so much easier to get your company into Wikipedia. And then really the holy grail is having both, right? I mean, that's just amazing. And then finally, and then building strong references around what you want on Wikipedia. So like if you brand your company for product management, then the references that you have should be built around product management. So for all the companies I work with, one of the things I like to discuss is the brand that the company wants, right? Like what do you want to be known for? And once I know that, the content that I build around that, the stories that I build around the company, all reference back to that. So when we go to Wikipedia and we actually put our company in there, the reference articles that we can drive eyeballs to that lead to sales is done for the right thing. Like if I'm a flower shop, what I don't want to do is have a bunch of references over UI UX, right? That has nothing to do with the flower industry because I'm not going to convert users. And once I convert users, they're going to be really, really confused about what our brand is, and it's not going to lead to closed sales. And then the number I like to go for, I know I said this previously, is 15 solid pieces of content about your company. And a plus is if it has a high ranking on Google. Now, I don't want to go into this too much, but for those of you who have kind of some more marketing experience, you know the difference between no follow and do follow, right? So it's a plus if we can get do follow links. With that said, I think if you're on an amazing outlet, like I'll give you an example, maybe if, like Inc.com, if you're on Inc.com and it's no follow, it's fine. You can still use that because Inc.com is just so well known. Other examples, if you get on Fortune, CNN, any of these sites, it's going to help you. But you want to shoot for 15 solid pieces of content. Now, take in mind, I'm not talking about 15 pieces of content where a blog post is linked for you or you have a quote. 15 pieces of content that is directly about your company. So an interview with the founder, an interview about the company, an article about a product release, etc. It doesn't need to be the entire article, but a good guideline is having the company's name somewhere in the title or a couple of times throughout the article. You want the article to be about your company. And then once you have those 15 pieces, the next thing you want to make sure is you do the Wikipedia page right and you have proper editing. So whether you go through me or somebody else, or you try to do it on your own, these are some things to keep in mind. The first is make sure you have a solid photo, a logo that's high res, and the general information is in your wiki article. So when you first create your Wikipedia page, you're not going to have a lot of content on there. So you want to make sure you cover the essentials, right? So general information, the industry that you're in, maybe your mission statement, your one-liner, your elevator pitch. Get the best information out there because you don't have a lot of time, and think to yourself, like, if I only have 100 words, what 100 words can I put in that's factual and that will drive the most users to go to my references or look up my company on my website? That's the mind frame you want to think about. And whoever's creating your Wikipedia page wants to have that same mentality. And then you want to create subheadings to your company industry. So you don't want, if you're in the flower business again, to have subheadings that relate to product development, right? You want to make sure that you're driving the right users from Wikipedia onto your company, and the best way to do that is by focusing on the subheadings, making sure that they are aligned with your brand, your story, and your industry. And then make sure your website's linked. Now, this is simple to do, but I've seen a lot of Wikipedia pages from clients that I have to go in and edit where the website isn't even linked. And it's like, it actually, as weird as this sounds, like, it hurts me. Like, I cringe when I see that because I'm just thinking to myself how many people you've lost in terms of sales that have come to your Wikipedia page. So, like, always, if you've hired somebody to make your Wikipedia page, if you have one out there, always 100% make sure that your website is linked in the piece. And then always try to go more neutral than controversial. This is more when you first start out, but I think it's a good guideline to follow always. If you work with somebody to get your Wikipedia page and you have solid references and it still gets taken down, really the most common reason why is something in that article is controversial. And to start, I think a lot of people try to get too ambitious with their Wikipedia page. They try to throw all this stuff on there, really advertise themselves. That's not the way to go. Like, getting on Wikipedia is a solid step. Let's first focus on getting on there by being extremely neutral. Let's keep being neutral, and then over time we can build more and more content. And I think too, like, people don't want to come to Wikipedia to see an ad. They want to go to Wikipedia to see advice or see factual information about something that they're interested in. And they count on Wikipedia on being extremely factual. And the editors have that philosophy, and you should have that philosophy. If you want to be really credible, your Wikipedia page should be filled with facts that have backed up references from outlets like Forbes, Huffington Post, all these outlets that back up the claims that you're making in your Wikipedia page in your actual page. And that actually is a better way to get substantial views and customers. And then link as many references as you can. So what's really cool and what I get most excited about when I work with companies on their Wikipedia page is not first getting them a page. That is cool, and companies get really excited about that. But for me, what's more exciting is that every article or piece of content that I make from the company after that point, I can put into our Wikipedia page. So it's going to drive more and more views. And so, as you guys know, I'm a big proponent of companies really advertising their blog, linking back to their blog post, which is great because that generates views. But now imagine every time we get a post, we can link it back to the 7th biggest website, in the world, Wikipedia. And that's why I think for a lot of companies, they experience a huge amount of growth once they get on Wikipedia. And then finally, I want to end with an analogy that I like to say about Wikipedia pages. And it's similar to shaping a diamond. And I'm not in the jewelry business. I think I have a couple of clients who are in the jewelry business actually on this. That'll see this video. So I apologize ahead of time. But my understanding, is creating a diamond and shaping a diamond takes constant refining, right? You have to get off all the dirt and crap off of it to make this beautiful diamond. And that's a similar kind of way you want to go about your Wikipedia page. Your Wikipedia page is never done. It should always be building. And once you get on Wikipedia, that's only the first step. From there, to really optimize it, you want to continuously put in work day after day, every time you get another reference, every time something big happens to the company. See if you can optimize your Wikipedia page more and more. And if you do that, you're going to see huge, huge growth. So that's the video, guys. Always email me if you have any questions, anything like that. And I look forward to working with you guys this week. I'm super, super stoked and excited. And that should be it. And I'll have another video out next week. So I'll talk to you guys then. Bye.